So welcome to be a Mensch, our ongoing class on Pirkei Avot, Ethics of Our Fathers, a fascinating study whenever you do it, but we've been having a great time going through it Mishnah by Mishnah. And today we are doing Perek Bet, or the second chapter of Pirkei Avot, Mishnah Yud, the 10th Mishnah. And if you have this book with you, we're on page 68, as you can see on the bottom there. Welcome, Sherilyn. Good to see you.
Rabbi, just for clarification for those that don't know, explain what Mishnah means.
Right. So Mishnah is part of the oral Torah, and it's basically the written part of the oral Torah. In other words, the tradition up until a certain point that was written down. Without taking too much time to go on about that, that's in a nutshell what it is. Perhaps in another class we'll spend some more time talking about that. For those of you that were at the Judaism Decoded course, you're very familiar with this. It's a portion of the oral Torah. From the entire Talmud.
You're breaking up.
I'm sorry. Hold on. In short, from the entire Talmud, these are kind of selections from the Talmud on the moral and ethical teachings that were given by these rabbis. So, for those of you that have been coming on an ongoing basis, you're familiar with the fact that recently we've been talking about Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai's 5 students. He had 5 students, and last week we learned about how he sent them each on a hunt. Go find for me what is the best thing in the world. Go find for me what is the worst thing in the world. And we discussed each of their responses and why those things would be valuable to a person who's trying to lead a moral life, an ethical life, and a Jewish life. Now, today's Mishnah starts off with Heim Amru Shlosha Dvarim, that each of these rabbis said 3 things. Now, obviously, each of them said many, many more than 3 things. If you know rabbis, you know they don't stop talking, right? So they say lots of things. But specifically with regards to teaching us lessons and things that we can glean from their lives, each of them said 3 things. So today we're going to do Rabbi Eliezer's 3 things. Okay? And it's also an opportunity to share a little bit more about Rabbi Eliezer. Rabbi Eliezer, for those of you that are familiar, is also the rabbi, the famous rabbi who quarreled with the sages about a particular oven in a particular instance in the Talmud. And when things didn't go his way, in other words, when they ruled the other way, he said, let the, I'm trying to remember the order here, hold on. He said, he basically called 3 supernatural occurrences to kind of bring proof to his way of thinking when it came to a particular law in the Torah. The first thing he said is, if my view of the halacha is correct, let this carob tree confirm it. And the carob tree moved from its place for a distance of 100 cubits away, which is about, 600 feet. All right? And then when that didn't happen, so he said, so that happened, and that took place. And the rabbi said, you can't bring proof from carob trees to the halacha, to the Torah. And Rabbi Eliezer said, if my view of the halacha is correct, let the water channel confirm it. And the water turned back and split, just as it had for Moses at the Red Sea and for Joshua at the River Jordan. And then they said, you can't bring proof from the rivers. So he said, well, if the halacha is like me, then let the walls confirm it. The walls of this study hall, let them confirm it. The walls of the study hall started to come in. And as they started to come in closer and closer, Rabbi Yehoshua called out and said, if sages are arguing about Torah, what business has this anything to do with you? In other words, talking to the walls. So the walls stood. They didn't want to come in more out of respect for Rabbi Yehoshua, and they didn't want to go back to the original place out of respect for Rabbi Eliezer. In any event, so finally he said, Rabbi Eliezer said, if the halacha is like me, let the heavens prove it. And a voice came down from the heavens and said, the halacha follows Rabbi Eliezer. And famously, the sages who were arguing with Rabbi Eliezer turned to the voice in heaven and said, Torah lo b'shamayim. They quoted from the Torah, where in the Torah it says that the Torah cannot be found in heaven. Torah is down here on this earth, and therefore we have to follow the way we understand it here in this world. It cannot go based on some heavenly or divine orchestration of it. This brings up lots of questions, but also gives us a lot of perspective. It brings up lots of questions because I don't get it. If the Torah, isn't the Torah godly, and isn't the Torah all about being heavenly and spiritual? The answer is yes, but that the Torah was given to us to deal with it in this physical world. And a part of that is understanding how it applies to this physical world. So even if in the spiritual world, meaning certainly they were both correct, just because 2 sages are arguing about something doesn't mean that only one of them is right. One of them says the law is like this. One of them says the law is like that. They're both right on a certain perspective. When you look at the Torah from a spiritual perspective, those two things don't necessarily contradict each other. It's only when it comes down to the physical world that we need to choose one thing to follow. But when it comes down into the physical world, which one do we follow? The one that makes sense in this physical world based on the physical rules. So if there's an argument between two people, we follow, for instance, the Torah tells us the majority, as many of you are familiar. So we go based on the majority. And even if you can bring proof from the spiritual worlds that you're correct, it doesn't work that way. So that big story, that famous story, which I know we didn't fully unpack now, but I gave it to you kind of on one foot, but it's definitely been unpacked at prior courses here. That famous story happened with Rabbi Eliezer. So what are the three things Rabbi Eliezer said? Arnold, you want to get us started? Go for it.
Okay. Rabbi Eliezer says, your friend's honor should be as dear to you as your own honor. So that even when he does something wrong, just as you would be patient with yourself, you will not be angered easily. Do teshuvah one day before your death, since you do not know which day that will be your last. Do teshuvah every day.
Number three.
Yeah. Could you bring that up a little bit more? There we go. Oh, thank you.
Sorry about that.
Yeah. Warm yourself next to the fire of Hachaman or Hachamim. Keep in close contact with them. But be careful not to become too casual and friendly with them, because you might act disrespectfully and be burned by their coals. Be punished. Because their bite is also like the bite of a fox. Their sting is like the sting of a scorpion. Their hiss is like the hiss of a snake. And all their words are like fiery coals.
So Rabbi Eliezer, thank you, Arnold. Rabbi Eliezer has 3 words of advice for us. Number 1, make sure you are always honoring your friend as you would yourself. Make sure you're patient, make sure you don't get angry, etc. Number 2, make sure you do teshuvah. I mean, we all want to do teshuvah. We all want to be as close as we can to Hashem. Obviously, we have our ups and our downs. We have our struggles. We have when we're completely devoted to Hashem, those moments when we're doing so well, etc. We're excelling in our relationship with Hashem, in our morality, and our ethics. We have our downs, right? So what does Rabbi Eliezer say to us? He says, listen, the day you die, he says, here's a little perspective. The day you die, you want to do teshuvah, right? Of course you want to be as close as you can to Hashem and come to Hashem in a way that you are as holy as you can be. He says, if you want to do teshuvah one day before you die, then you should be doing teshuvah every day. Because no one knows how long they're going to live in this world. And number 3, he says, is your relationship with those that study Torah a lot should be kind of a balance. Number 1, they're very warm and you know, it's enjoyable to be around them because they have so much wisdom and so much to share in terms of the Torah, in terms of being close to Hashem, etc. It's a great thing to do, to be next to Talmudic scholars, next to Torah scholars, etc. However, you should also be careful because usually they're very witty and witty is the wrong word. They're very sharp, right? And so he compares them to a fire. He says, stay close to them like that you're warm, but don't get too close to them that you'll get burnt. Right? Don't make yourself too comfortable. Make sure that there's an element of respect there, right? So these are the 3 words of advice from Rabbi Eliezer. Let's break them down one at a time. So first of all, with regards to the doing teshuvah one day before you die, that perspective of keeping every single day critical. Fishel, you want to read for us a little bit? Every day is critical.
Every day is critical. Often people push off doing good things they want to do in favor of less important pursuits, thinking that they will have plenty of time to catch up on the important things. Rabbi Eliezer teaches us to cherish each moment as if it were your last. Put first things first, learn Torah, do mitzvah, and leave the other things for later if there's time.
Very good. In other words, he's saying stay focused on things that are important. Many of you, I'm sure, have read, right? By raise of hands, has anybody read the book? I forget who the author is, but it's one of these very, very popular self-help books. It's a yellow book. It's called 7 Habits to Successful. You read it, Fishel? I forget what it's called.
Yes.
Remind me the full title, 7 Habits.
7 Habits of highly successful people.
Yeah. So in that book, one of the main things that he introduces,
Stephen Covey.
excuse me, one of the main things that he introduces, who was it by, you said?
Stephen Covey.
Yes, Stephen Covey, right. Exactly. Thank you. So one of the things he introduces there is to make a list in your life of what is important and what is urgent. Usually those things are not the same. Important things are very, very often not urgent, and urgent things are very, very important, very, very often not important. In other words, what's urgent to you often, to most people in their lives right now is, oh, I have a leak in my roof and I got to fix it. I have bills to pay and I got to make sure that I go to work and I pay them. I have a deadline to meet and I got to make sure that I do it, right? What's important to us is usually almost always not urgent. My children are important to me, but is it urgent right now that I should be with my children? No, it's not urgent for me to be with them, right? It's the most important thing, right? To make a list of the most important things in my life, right? My relationship with Hashem, my children, my relationship with my spouse, right? These are the most important things to us. But very, very often we mix them up. And we spend a lot of time doing urgent things, supporting the family, making sure that I can pay the mortgage on time, et cetera, all those things which are very urgent. I'm not saying we shouldn't do them. But Stephen Covey reminds us that we should make sure, very similar to what Rabbi Eliezer is saying, perhaps this is where he got it from, that make sure you're not just spending time on the urgent things, but you're also spending time on the things that are important in your life, right? So Torah and mitzvahs, your relationship with Hashem, etc. Make sure that and if you have this perspective, right? Obviously, you shouldn't let it consume you, but if you have this perspective that on any given day you might die, then it's much easier to stay focused. All right, let's move on to page 2, or whatever, the next page of this lesson. We learned already a little bit about Rabbi Eliezer. Let's skip the biography. Let's talk a little bit about the relationship that we should have with Torah scholars. Not too far and not too close, right? Ron, what's the perfect balance? Ron? Go for it.
And not too far, not too close. Torah scholars are compared to fire. When you sit at a distance from a fire, you can enjoy its light, but cannot feel its heat. The Mishnah tells us to be warmed by the fire of Chakman, meaning to develop a close relationship and not just to listen to their teachings from afar. However, getting too close to a fire increases the risk of burns. When together with the sages, don't forget that you're not on their level. You must still be careful to treat them with the utmost respect.
The honest truth is, and unfortunately in today's day and age, this is not stressed enough. Thank you, Ron, for reading that for us. The honest truth is that any relationship really has to have a combination of these things. In other words, we are very, very aware of love in today's day and age, right? We're like, oh, if you're gonna have a relationship with your spouse, there has to be love in the relationship, right? If you're gonna have a relationship with your children, there has to be love in the relationship. If you don't love your children, then the whole thing's gonna fall apart, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Unfortunately, what's not spoken about enough in today's day and age is respect, which is in a way the opposite of love. In other words, with our children, with our spouses, it's not enough just to love them. If I love you, then me and you were just one unit and we just merge into one unit, me and my spouse. And if you ask anybody who's ever been in a relationship with anybody, never mind, a long-term relationship, a marriage and things like that, right? Even if they've just been roommates, right? If you're too close, if you guys just become one and almost each person loses their separate existence, it can work for a very short amount of time. But as time goes on, that relationship doesn't work. There has to be a sense of distance but closeness. In other words, this is my space, that's your space, and then we come together. Respect and love. So there's the respect, which kind of gives us each our own entity, and then the love, which brings us together. Similarly with the Chachamim, Rabbi Eliezer is encouraging us to have a very close relationship with the Chachamim. Don't just benefit from their light, don't just read their books, right? But actually develop a close relationship, even if not with all of the sages, but at least find someone who's going to be your rabbi, your mentor, and let them into your life, let them affect how you go about your life, etc., right? But don't get too close that you lose the respect for them, because that's what happens, right? For a relationship has to have a certain element of respect in order for it to actually be a healthy relationship. In his analogy, like fire, if you get too close to it, you will get burned. So if we have three stages here, where you just benefit from their light, you benefit from their light and their warmth, or you get burned, Rabbi Eliezer is encouraging us to be very, very firmly in the middle. Benefits from their light, benefit from their warmth, but don't get too close so that you will get burned.
That's very hard in a marriage.
I brought the analogy of a marriage really just for a moment. I want to just show that idea of the fact that love and respect are both important. Certainly, one's relationship with a rabbi or one's relationship with a sage, in terms of a Torah scholar, etc., should not be the same as a relationship with one's spouse. All relationships are difficult. All relationships take work. There's no such thing as a relationship that just is. Even when two people do click, there's no such thing as a relationship that just sails alone on its own. They all require work. So that's absolutely true. It is very difficult. And certainly recognizing what is the perfect balance for each relationship is also a struggle. And that's one of the things that Rabbi Eliezer is teaching us here, 100%. Okay. And why don't we end off with a story? Stephanie, you want to read the story for us? The Honorable Butler?
Where is that?
You see that? I'm sorry, let me zoom in a little.
I see. Oh,
go for it.
I see.
I'll scroll down as you go along.
Okay. There was once a wealthy man who had a poor butler. Being a kind man, he trained the young butler and gave him money to start his own business, and eventually the butler became wealthy. Well, later the employer lost his money and with no other option went to the former butler and asked for help getting back on his feet. To his dismay, the newly rich man gave his old boss a cold shoulder, refusing to give him a thing. As soon as he left, however, the former butler sent a messenger dressed as a beggar to his former employer to sell a precious diamond for one small coin. A few days later, he sent another messenger dressed as a businessman to buy the diamond for a huge sum of money. The former butler's family, watching this strange sequence of events unfold, asked him to explain. I owe to the man my entire fortune, and any honor I receive as a wealthy man is really his. How embarrassing it would have been for him to accept money from his former butler. As a result of this business deal, however, he not only has the means to build up his wealth again, but more importantly, he still has his dignity.
Thank you, Stephanie. And
That's great.
The power of this story is the first lesson that Rabbi Eliezer teaches us. May the honor of your friend be dear to you as your own honor. We're not just talking about helping another person. We're not just talking about giving money to another person when they need it. We're talking about respecting their dignity, right? That when we give them, don't give it to them in a way that they feel like, oh, somebody's helping me. Would you want that done to you? Nobody likes to feel like the Nebuch case, right? Nobody likes to feel like, oh, there's a dignified way even to be able to help someone. There's helping someone, and there's helping someone in a dignified way. And that's what Rabbi Eliezer reminds us. So to summarize, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai had 5 students. The first student which we're discussing, each of them taught us 3 things. The first student which we're discussing today is Rabbi Eliezer, and he teaches us 3 lessons. Number 1, let the dignity of your friend be as dear to you as your own dignity. Number 2, and as a result, you'll be patient, you won't get angry, etc. Number 2, treat every day as if it's your last day alive. In other words, in how you have your relationships with other people, and certainly in how you have your relationship with God, right? Serve Hashem, do teshuvah, do what needs to be done as if tomorrow won't arrive, right? And number 3, make sure you have a conscious effort being invested in your relationship with Torah scholars. Make sure you're close enough to them that you can be warm from them, but not too close that you'll be getting burned. Thank you all for joining us for To Be a Mensch. This has been Mishnah Yud, the 10th Mishnah of Pirkei Avot, chapter 2, of Ethics of Our Fathers, chapter 2. Please join us next week, once again, at 11 a.m. It's a 20-30-minute class each week as we dissect the second of Rabbi Eliezer's 5 students, which will be Rabbi Yehoshua, and the 3 things that he teaches us. Have a great day.
Thank you.